Hello and welcome to our live stream. I'm Dave Dahl, Global Alliance Manager at Rockwell Automation. Joining me today in the hot seat is Mark Beckman, the Director of Manufacturing Industry Solutions at Microsoft. We're in the Rock Studios booth today for this live stream interview. We're hearing from Microsoft on their views on digital transformation, IT/OT, convergence, and maybe get a little philosophical about the industrial metaverse. So for those of you joining us today, I ask you to just take a minute, think about some of those terms, terminology, and maybe products you'll hear, and just ask yourselves how they're impacting you yet. Are you hearing about them? Are you trying to use them? Is anyone asking you about the industrial metaverse, what it is and what it isn't? So hopefully we'll give you a little insight today. So first, Mark, thank you for joining me up here. I think big crowds are back. Got to love this turnout, right?
Yeah, it's great, and thanks for inviting us to collaborate with you and have this session today.
Yeah.
It is great seeing all the people come back to Automation Fair this year.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. So let's start off with a kind of simple question. Microsoft being probably the largest IT company in the world, maybe some people are surprised to see you at Automation Fair. So let's start off with the softball. Why does Rockwell partner with Microsoft and vice versa? Why are you guys all here?
Well, first of all, we do know something a little bit about manufacturing. We do make products,
That's true.
Surface, Xbox, and we make these little things called data centers as well, which is every bit of manufacturing process. Why we're here, and more importantly, why we collaborate with people like Rockwell, because the greenfield, brownfield manufacturing operations include an ecosystem of players. We've had the good fortune of working with Rockwell throughout the past several years, but I think what's really stepped up is we look to accelerate the advancement of Industry 4.0, the connected enterprise, the blending of IT and OT together. And we think that we're a big part of that because we're on the IT side, and naturally Rockwell's on the OT side.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Just real live IT/OT convergence going on here and impacting a lot of the products and things that we have going on. So you're speaking later today about the next frontier of digital transformation in manufacturing. So let's just start there. What is the next frontier to this manufacturing audience?
Yeah, I think if we think about the next frontier, first of all, I'd like to say we've had Industry 4.0 for 11 years, all right? And I think it's very much important to think about what's here and now, first of all. I think we're a little bit behind in terms of what we need to do. But when we start thinking about the next frontier, I think what's important is manufacturers think about scale. What can we do to really do things in our operations across the board to advance Industry 4.0, the connected enterprise, et cetera. What I see happening as I talk to my manufacturing clients that I work with is that they're seeing, too, there's a lot of pressure on them to do things faster. But the reality of the next frontier is there's technologies that have been much more democratized and a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can find in our manufacturing operations, especially with the workers, the frontline workers. We can do a lot of things that can improve their productivity, their quality, efficiency, to the benefit of Industry 4.0 or the connected enterprise. So democratization of technology, like collaboration tools, democratization about analytics, and as manufacturers shift more to being able to make decisions with data that they've always had, become much more popular in order to address some of the quality, efficiency, productivity issues that they have. Now, I think if we look at the future, there's some really interesting things happening in the autonomous front with artificial intelligence in particular. Again, being more democratized. We can put those things in place not only to do autonomous type things, but also help the workers by serving them with information that's generated from the models in artificial intelligence that give them choices to make versus trying to figure out what they actually need to do. So that saves time in resolving problems, saves times in dealing with outages and those sort of things to improve things. So that next frontier, I think, is an interesting one.
So you covered a lot of things in there, and one I'll call it a buzzword that's permeating a lot of conversations today is this industrial metaverse, right? And it's kind of everywhere, but some people still aren't really comfortable with what it, most people aren't really comfortable with what it means and what it doesn't mean, right? So, how much reality, how much science fiction? So what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, so, I do think industrial metaverse is going to come into play a lot more. I think what we sometimes eschew is the fact that we've actually been dealing with digital twins for a long time.
Sure.
All right, you go back to Apollo 13, it's a good example of a digital twin. That helped us solve that particular problem. But what the data-driven aspect of blending the physical world with the digital world is really, to me, what is the foundation of the metaverse. All right, and we can do some fantastic things with that. All right, we can do analysis and simulations of the plant lines, which obviously Rockwell is big in doing some things with that. We can do simulations of our supply chains. We can see things much more clearly by being able to blend those two things together, and I think everybody would agree. If I'm virtually in the world and I can see my supply chain or my machine or my production line and look at the data that's coming from that in a virtual reality or an augmented reality type of thing through the metaverse, it's a good thing. And I think getting back to kind of the untapped potential of our people,
Yeah.
when more people can see that information more readily, we're probably going to improve how we do things. Right? And that, I think, is part of the one of the good reasons for the metaverse coming into play.
That's a really interesting explanation, right? So while there might be a lot of buzz around it, there's a healthy dose of reality behind it. And a good point on Apollo 13. I'd never heard anyone mention that as a twin before, but it's an interesting example. So we've covered a lot of stuff that's sort of future looking and cool stuff, but 2022 has not been kind to a lot of people and businesses. These are tough times. So what are you seeing and hearing from your customers about what they're actually doing and able to do today that sort of fits in with that vision of the next frontier?
Yeah, well, you talk about economics being a big factor in how we think about things, but I'd add actually the COVID, coming out of COVID.
All part of it, yeah.
All part of that. And the point I made earlier, as I talk to manufacturers, there's a lot more pressure from management saying, we need to step up our digitization efforts, all right? And I think because of the economic pressures, we kind of can't forget about investing in some of these projects. And taking advantage of the situation is kind of what we need to do in terms of investing in things. Good companies can invest during downturns, all right, and come out on the back end actually better off, all right? But what I think is important right now, and it's really has been driven by some of the early Industry 4.0 efforts that took place. We ended up in pilot purgatory. We played around with technology, and unfortunately, we didn't do a lot of good due diligence about what's the real value that these investments are going to produce for us. And I think in the tough economic times, we have to take a much harder look at how we want to spend our money and what the return is going to be in order to make smart investments and where we want to place our bets.
Good point, good point. I think we have time for one more question. So simple question, I know it's going to be a complicated answer, but the one topic that probably needs to be involved in all these conversations is really sustainability, right? So I know Microsoft is a world leader in the topic, both with what Microsoft does inside its own walls and its own internal processes, but also how you guys help your customers as well. So give us a little background on Microsoft's point of view, both internally and externally, on sustainability.
Well, sustainability is very important to us. We've made some very bold, ambitious statements about how we're going to put carbon back into the world based off of the start of the company. But we have some very aggressive goals. I guess a couple things along these lines. Number one, before I get into the point of view, we're happy to share what we're learning. All right, because this is, talk about a new frontier. This is a new frontier. All right, so we're willing to share some of the learnings and our work with clients on their sustainability efforts. But from a point of view perspective, and actually if I go back to the economics and COVID statement that I just shared, sustainability is pretty important to just about everybody these days. All right, it's important to the board, it's important to shareholders, it's important to customers, and quite frankly, it's important to employees as well.
Absolutely.
And what I'm hearing from some manufacturers is, what can I do to take the sustainability interest and actually get a double hit,
right.
All right? Because I can actually think about some of the projects that I want to do in plants around the connected enterprise and use sustainability funds in order to address that. From a point of view perspective, those I think are things that we can think about as we look to take out energy costs, water waste, anything else that goes in the manufacturing process.
All great points, good points. Okay, so that's a wrap. I want to thank Mark for joining us up here in the studio. We're going to head back out to the show floor and all the excitement going on behind us. If you want to learn more, click on the link in the description. And coming up next, the next live stream is Edge Innovations brings new data for better analytics. Thank you all for watching.